In this video, we're looking at green stuff, coming up after this. What's going on, guys and girls? Welcome back to Aquila Painting. My name is Graham and welcome to the channel. And to all you new guys and girls, grab a pew. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to use green stuff, how it works and how to get brilliant results in just a few different simple ways. Green stuff and sculpting in general is really new to me, so I thought this would be an awesome video for something that we can learn together. So this project's going to be broken down into two parts. The first part of this video is going to be the construction and the building of the container itself. And the second part is going to be all the painting of it. I don't have any fancy tools or anything like that. I just have a few bits and bobs that I have on my painting table that you will have as well. Now with that said, let's get into it. So first of all, the tools I'll be using are a hobby knife or sharp blade, a selection of different size paintbrushes, some water, and believe it or not, a comb. The comb I'm using is two different sizes on the same thing. And they are all the tools that I'm using for this project. A couple of different size brushes, a comb, some water, and a hobby knife. So the first thing I do with my green stuff is I get it out and I cut the center piece out. Reason being is the two different parts of the green stuff have been touching. So that is already going to be cured, so it's going to be useless to us. So I'll just cut that out and just have the two bits separately. You can buy green stuff where they're not touching, so you're not wasting any of your product. And that's probably what I'll do next time in the future when I go to buy some more. But for now, this is what I've got. So next, I combine the two parts evenly. The way I do this is that I squish it all up together first and then put it into a big sausage. Fold the sausage in two and then start twisting it, and keep doing this until it gets to a good consistency. Every so often, squishing it all together and making a new sausage out of it. Once your green stuff's mixed, it's on to the sculpting. Now, as I said in the intro to the video, I've never used green stuff properly before, maybe once or twice, and I've barely scratched the surface. So I did a couple of test pieces on the container just to see how it works and how I can use it the best I can. The one thing that I realized really quickly is to keep my hands and my tools wet, because green stuff is ultra sticky. And having that water there just helps it not to stick onto your tools when you're trying to cut it or trying to shape it. So that being said, I just went for it and got a big bit and slapped it on one of the sides. So I took the ball of green stuff and I slapped it onto one of the sides. I wanted this container to look like it has been in a city or a planet that Nurgle has infested, just so it goes really well with my Death Guard army. So I wanted all those patches of Nurgly growths and pustules as well. So with a little bit of playing with the green stuff done and an idea of what I wanted the container to look like, I started applying more and more green stuff to the container. And this is where the first basic technique comes into play. Once I got my blob of green stuff where I wanted it on the container, I pushed it on with my thumbs. Then I smoothed it over with my wet thumb and just did little circles to smooth over the surface of the green stuff so you couldn't see any fingerprints in it. Next, I took my paint brushes. Now instead of using the brush end, I wanted to use the other end where it was rounded off so I could make divots in the green stuff, pull the green stuff out with the end of the brush so it looks like stretched skin or stretched fleshy growths, and just make that basic texture look. I did this with a couple of size brushes because the handles are different sizes, giving me different size indentations and looks. I was really happy with the look of that kind of texture and quickly found out with the end of the brush I could start making 3 circle sigil for Nurgle and started dotting that around the piece. It was also at this time when I realised that I wanted some smaller details as well. So it wasn't just big bits of green stuff with big details, but having those little bits of texture as well. So what I did is I got a bit of paperclip and put it into the end of the cork, just for a little handle, and started pressing that in around the green stuff for the smaller texture and smaller details. This gave a good look for like pock marks and just small holes, and just went around the green stuff putting in groups of 3 or groups of 7 because it's Nurgle. It was at this point that I thought I needed some tentacles, I needed something living on it to give the piece a little bit more of an alive look, a little bit of movement. And I looked to my Death Guard for inspiration. And alongside all those pustules and growths and horrible bits, I noticed all the tentacles as well and thought that's great, that will look awesome if I can get some tentacles and bits and bobs growing out of this container. And this is where the little trick comes in with the comb. So what you do, you roll out a sausage of green stuff on your cutting mat. The thickness of the sausage is going to be the thickness of the tentacle. If you want a big tentacle, go for a thicker, longer sausage. If you want small little ones, then go for thinner, smaller pieces of green stuff. And this is where the two different sizes of comb comes in. So if you've got a smaller tentacle, use the finer comb side. If you've got a larger tentacle, use the wider comb side. This will make the tentacle look more in scale with the container that it's on, giving the piece a little bit more realism. So now that we have our green stuff sausage and a wet comb, I place the comb on top of the green stuff and just start lightly rolling, adding pressure as we go. Now you don't want to add too much pressure at this point because then you'll just flatten your sausage and you have to start all over again. So gently just apply pressure until you feel the green stuff just give a little bit. Also with this, the rolling motion will help to create those grooves. I wanted some of the tentacles to be more defined in the features and some tentacles to have a softer appearance. So some tentacles I pushed a little harder and rolled for a little bit longer, and some tentacles I didn't. Once you've rolled out the tentacles, it's time to cut them to size. So decide the length and the part of the green stuff you want and take your hobby knife and cut it down. Now one side, with a wet finger, just roll out the tip very lightly so it's a bit more of a taper. You can do this while rolling the green stuff with your comb. Put a little bit more pressure on one side of the comb than the other. Once you've done that, your tentacle is essentially done and we can add it to the container. With placement of the tentacles, I was looking at the green stuff I'd already applied and looked at the holes and the divots I made using the backs of the brushes and thought they would be really good connection points for my green stuff tentacles to go. So what I did, with the fatter end of the tentacle, I placed it into one of the holes, got my hobby knife and pressed it in, and then got the end of the brush again and started smoothing it away. Once I was smooth enough, then I got a wet finger and just finished it off lightly. Obviously it's going to be easier with the bigger tentacles, but on the smaller tentacles, I placed them in the holes and made sure they had a good adhesion to the rest of the green stuff and didn't bother smoothing them in. Once the tentacles were in place, I then started shaping them with the end of the brush, moving them around until I was happy with the placement. They looked like they were either reaching up the container or moving around, feeling their way around the container. I really like how these tentacles came out. I actually think they're my favourite part of the container. I'm so stoked on how they look, and it's such an easy technique with the comb. Looking at the container now, I wanted a couple of different textures on there, apart from the two that I've already done, with the paperclip and the brushes. So I rolled out some very small bits of green stuff, placed them around the existing green stuff patches, and with my paperclip tool pressed in the middle of the little circles, making them look like pocked marked flesh or popped pustules. I added these all around the container. I also added some larger balls of green stuff and put them into the indentations I made with the brushes, so it looked like ready to burst pustules as well, to give the container a little bit more texture. I still felt at this point that I wanted a little bit more texture and some different kind of details. So I started looking at different things I could press into the green stuff. And a couple of things that I found I could use, the caps for my paintbrushes. I've got a couple of different ones, some thin ones and I've got some thicker ones from GW as well. And I found that they give you a really cool, different kind of circular effect that goes really well with the divots that I've already made with the end of the brushes. Looking at my container now, I was starting to feel it was coming together really well. There was something missing, a little bit of character that I wanted as well. And I thought, I've got loads of bits and bobs for my Death Guard army. Why not rifle through those little bits and see if I can add a little bit of character with those? It was at this point where I came up with the idea of having a plague marine that has been like engulfed into the container and just reaching out trying to ensnare passers-by. A bit like the Flying Dutchman in the Pirates of the Caribbean series. Part of the ship, part of the crew. So while rifling through all of my bits and bobs for my Death Guard army, I found a head I really liked, a chest plate that I thought would work well, and an arm and a pauldron. But I also found one of the little icons that you can have instead of a weapon choice, and thought that would look really good just to give it a little bit more of a Nurgle theme. Taking these parts, I trimmed them down, cleaned them all up, and found on the container where I wanted to have them. With the arm of the Plague Marine that I chose, I couldn't find one with a decent hand, and I didn't want him to have a weapon in his hand. And looking at my other Death Guard units, I thought, why not have a big tentacle instead of a hand? So I gave him a little tentacle, put it into a shape that I was happy with, and put that to one side to let dry. So, a tip that I found useful during this project build, working with green stuff all over one piece, is to work in sections. I kept finding that I was putting my hands while picking up the piece in the green stuff that I'd already sculpted and having to go back and re-smooth it, add that texture all over again. So what I did was I would work on a section, let that dry, and then work on the next section, building up more and more texture and detail on the piece. Now my container was really starting to have a character that I was looking for, but I wanted to go to the next level. And I saw on Instagram from Fine Detail 83 how he'd taken the same container and beaten he'd cut holes into it like blast marks. He'd take like a Dremel tool or a pin vise and put like bullet holes all up it. He'd bent it out of shape so it looked really, really beat up. And I wanted to take what he did with his and incorporate that into mine. So Fine Brush 87, cheers dude. I started with a little hole. I really liked the idea of having a tentacle reaching through some of these damaged parts. I started off with taking my hobby knife and puncturing a hole into one of the doors. This actually made the door fall off, but I found out that it was actually easier to work with the door off and then stick it back on later. So what I did is just cut a rough star with my hobby knife and pushed in the middle of the star shape into where the container would be. So it looked like a piece of shrapnel would hit the container and went straight through it. Next I made a little tentacle and stuck it to the inside of the door with the end sticking out. I found that the green stuff wasn't really sticking very well, so I got some just basic all-purpose glue, stuck the tentacle to the inside of the door and stuck the door back onto the container. I love this, it makes it look like there's something living in the container, something unknown that could burst out any minute. With these little pieces, I find it really helps to add something like that, like a little story to the piece, gives it more character and just helps to heighten the immersion when it's on the tabletop. With that being a success, I wanted an even bigger one on the side. So I did the same thing with cutting a star shape into the container, but with more lines and pushed it into the container. The one thing I did have a problem with is that the plastic did snap in certain places instead of bending. So you just have to be careful and just slowly ease the plastic when you're trying to bend it. Last but not least, I took my pin vise with several different sizes of drill bit and went around the piece looking for places where I could have bullet holes, pock marks, and just general wear and tear from when you're on the battlefield. And that was it. I called my Nurgle Chaos container done. And there you have it, guys, my first foray into green stuff and sculpting. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's given you a couple of ideas for your green stuff projects at home. Let me know what you've built, let me know what you're working on and what ideas this video has given you in the comments below. I can't wait to show you what it looks like all painted up in the next video. So make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video next week. Cheers for sticking around to the end, guys. Thanks for checking this video out. And like always, till next time. Peace!